Would you mind, Father, telling us what is natural law?
Yeah, natural law. I think we can understand natural law in terms of its analogy to human law, right? Positive law. In human affairs, what we do is we make a bunch of precepts or prohibitions, and it's basically do this and don't do that. That's fundamentally what a law is. It's an authority that's promulgating some precept that says do this or don't do that, okay? And natural law basically says this: human nature has written in it precepts for what to do and what to avoid. And the very first of all these precepts is do good and avoid evil. And the natural law is basically the unfolding of that statement. What does it mean to do good and to avoid evil? Well, to unfold that statement, you have to look at human nature. That's where the word natural law comes from human nature. What is it to be a man? So I do this often with my students in the high school. I say, let's define a natural inclination. What do we mean by a natural inclination? We mean a tendency that a natural thing has for the activities necessary for its being or its well-being. To give some examples, eating is an activity necessary for the existence of a human being, and any animal for that matter. So natural law says human beings should eat and should be able to eat, right? Drinking the same way, breathing the same way, reproducing, right? If we have these activities, then it's possible for our nature to continue existing, right? But if we're prevented from doing these activities, our nature will die out. If we can't reproduce, our nature will die out. If we can't eat or drink or breathe, our nature will die out. Interestingly, the fact that we have a natural inclination does not always mean it corresponds to a conscious inclination. I want to make that distinction. A natural inclination is not always conscious. It's deeper than that. A sick person, for example, sometimes loses the desire, the conscious desire to eat. Nevertheless, they still have to eat to live. And then sometimes people lose a conscious desire to reproduce with a member of the opposite sex. They still have to fulfill that natural inclination within them. It's still a natural inclination, even if their conscious desire has been taken away. Right? Our species would die out if people didn't carry out this activity. So, we see these examples, breathing, eating, drinking, reproducing, as clear examples of natural inclinations. And natural law says, in order for human beings to flourish, you have to be able to do these things. Right? That's what natural law says. It basically says, do these things. Eat, drink, breathe, reproduce, right? Exactly. But reproduce in a reasonable way. I often say, man's nature is not just to be an animal. It's to be an animal with reason. And just like we say, well, okay, it's okay for the German Shepherd to go to the bathroom on the neighbor's lawn, it's not okay for you to go to the bathroom on your neighbor's lawn. Certainly using the restroom is necessary for your being, but doing it reasonably is how human beings do it. We do it with reason. In the same way, we reproduce with reason. And that tells us, for example, that our children should have both a father and a mother who love each other and stay together, right? And that's a reasonable way for human children to come into existence and to be raised. And therefore we see that also part of natural law is the fact that families should be supported, and the stability and unity of families should be supported, right? So that's something that comes out of the natural law. And then it's natural for human beings as social animals to have friendships and human relationships, and therefore natural law says that human beings should be able to interact with other human beings in such a way as to form friendships and communions and bonds of friendship. And then finally, and in some way most perfectly, man's highest good, since he's an animal with reason, is to know the truth. We're the only animal that seeks reasons for things. That's why we're having this interview. We're seeking reasons.
We like to ask why.
You're a mathematician. You're constantly giving reasons for why things are true. And there is an objective truth, and you can know it, and there are reasons for that truth. So for man, man's highest good is acquiring the greatest goods of truth, which are found in wisdom. And therefore, natural law says that man has a right to pursue an education and to be educated in truth and wisdom. So all of these things are an unfolding of human nature, and the first principle, do good. What is good? Whatever is perfective of human nature. What's perfective of human nature? any activity necessary for the being or well-being of human nature. And then you just take the flip side of that and say, avoid evil. Don't restrict those things. Don't stop people from having an education. Don't stop them from having friendships. Don't stop them from having families. Don't stop them from eating or drinking or breathing and things like that. That's all part of the natural law. And so when you look back on it, you say, now I understand why we have human laws. Human laws are just to put in some kind of a codified way at the level of the state the very things that were originally written in human nature to begin with, that we can just discern and say, hey, our species is not going to be in a good way unless we're directed to do these things and avoid those things. So does that help? Does that kind of answer the question?
A lot, yes. Great. But not all laws are in accordance with natural law.
That's absolutely right.
So what are you to do as a human when you know that a law clearly violates natural law?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So for example, if someone were to say, look, here's a law. In Egypt, they said, take all the little boys and throw them in the river. There's a law right there, huh? The Jewish boys, and throw them in the river. Huh?
Firstborn.
Yeah. And the answer is, well, look, just like if my doctor prescribes poison, then he's actually not acting in accordance with the medical art. He says to me, here, take this poison. Well, then the proper response is, no, I'm not going to take poison because the purpose of your art is to heal, not to kill. Right? In the same way, if I look at the public authority who promulgates the law, and they give me a law that's contrary to the natural law, that is, that will actually impede human flourishing and happiness and what's good for our nature, the being and the well-being of human nature, then you say no to that, right? And even if that means that you're going to have to subject yourself to the penalties that the public authority would impose. Huh? Socrates was a great example of that. Socrates was pursuing wisdom, and the public authority said, no, you can't do that. And so he allowed himself to be killed by the public authority for the sake of following that higher law and not acting contrary to man's nature. So that's what you have to do in a case like that. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to do that. Yeah.
Because very few people, I have seen very few cases of business owners that said, no, I'm not going to close down my business.
Yeah.
I need to feed my family. I
Yes.
need to help my employees feed
Yes.
their families.
There's a natural right. That part of natural law is being able to work and provide for your needs of the physical and emotional needs of your family, right? Those are definitely things as well.
So for me, coming to this country for one reason, and only one reason, for freedom.
Yes.
That's the one reason that
Yes.
I came here. I was very disappointed at the response from people. I said, we behaved as cattle.
Yes.
We were told, stay inside, and nobody said, why?
Yeah.
Nobody said, I need to feed my family.
Yes.
I need my children to go to school.
Yes.
I will assume those risks.
Yes.
Why is that? The
Yeah.
only rational argument that I heard from a big corporation, and I open my doors and people who work, contract the virus and die, they can sue me, and I will lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only reason that I've heard. But still, if I'm a self-sustaining businessman, why would I close my own business?
Yes. Yeah.
And why would I accept this?
Yes.
I have a hard time understanding.
Yeah. No, that's true. And the fact of the matter is that in cases like that, I think early on, when people were still scared because they didn't know exactly how serious the illness was, maybe that reaction might have been justified. You say to yourself, I'm weighing goods and evils, and it's like, if there's a high likelihood that I'm going to die if I go to work or something like that, well then fine, I understand that reasoning. But once it became clear that that was not the case, then I think you're right that very often I think people behaved more like cattle and didn't stop and think, hey, look, we know more than we used to, and there need to be adjustments in the way that the civil authorities are responding to this. So.